Working with right triangle trigonometry, we also need to remember the Pythagorean theorem. And so if you have a right triangle, if you take the legs and square them, so a squared plus b squared, add them together, you will equal the hypotenuse squared, which is c squared. You got to be able to solve for all the different letters in the formula, so let's practice with solving for a. So you write it down, and we want a by itself, so we have to move b squared to the other side, so we subtract that. That gets us a squared equals c squared minus b squared. To get a, we need to square root both sides. That gets us a equals the square root of c squared minus b squared. Now you do the same thing for solving for b and solving for c from the original. We also work with Pythagorean triples. These are numbers that will make this statement true every single time. 3, 4, 5 is kind of one of the famous right triangles, because that's kind of what Pythagoras is attributed to proving his theorem with. But there are quite a few, and we can keep going. I just listed a few here. So they're kind of handy to have. And continuing with the practice, we've got Romeo and Juliet need the Pythagorean theorem, and you've got 3 practice problems there. Also working with right triangle trig is some special right triangles. Now here we've got a couple squares, and each side is 1 unit. Well, kind of need to know the angles, and can we figure out the last side? Sides are always across from capital letters, and sides are always lowercase letters, generally speaking. So to start with, we've got side A is 1, that's the one up at the top. Side B is 1, that's the one off on the left side. C would be the hypotenuse. The other thing that we can kind of figure out, well, let's just go ahead and figure out the last side. So we would plug in A is 1, B is 1, C we don't know. So 1 squared plus 1 squared, that's going to be 2, and that's C squared. Square root of 2 is what C will be. We can also get the angles here. Angle C, that's the right angle, and angle A and B are both the same, and it looks like they cut that 90-degree angle in half, so half of 90 is 45. So this is a 45, 45, 90 triangle. Look at the one on the right, same thing going on, so we know it's a 45, 45, 90 triangle. A and B are both 2. We need to find C. So 2 squared plus 2 squared, well, that's going to be 4 plus 4, which is 8. Or just, we can write that as 2 times 4, because it's 2 fourths. Just like over on the first one, it was 2 ones. And then square root of 4 is 2, that went on the outside, and 2 is not a perfect square, it stayed on the inside. And so C is 2 square root of 2. Kind of take a look at the similarities and differences with the sides there, and then you're going to complete the rest of that page. The other special right triangle is working from an equilateral triangle. And angle C is the 90-degree, that's the altitude drawn in that triangle. And if it's an equilateral triangle, it also means it's an equiangular. So angle B is the same as all the triangles before we drew all the angles before we drew the altitude. And 180 divided by 3, that's 60. And then A would be half of that. And we know side C is 2. Side A, well, that altitude cuts it in half. That's going to be 1. It's B that we need to find. So plug in A is 1, C is 2. So 1 squared plus B squared equals 2 squared. So 1 plus B squared equals 4. And so B squared equals 3. Square root both sides. B is square root of 3, or 1 square root of 3 is another way of saying it. Do the same thing on the second triangle. So again, 30, 60, 90. And we know C is 4 and A is 2. And then we got 2 squared plus B squared equals 4 squared. So 4 plus B squared equals 16, or B squared equals 12. Square rooting both sides, 12 is 4 times 3. Square root of 4 is 2, so that would be 2 root 3. Again, take a look at what similarities are going on and what's different. Use that to help you. So pay attention to the patterns. Use that to help you with the rest of the page. And then we'll fill in the review. And then once we get those first two, we want to be able to fill this in so that we've always got it. And then there's the practice, and that poof book will get taped in your book there once it gets stamped off.